So our next speaker, you may have seen the title of his session, which is, certainly going to raise a few eyebrows here in the audience, but wait till you see him on stage. He is very magnetic, charismatic, and is going to say why marketeers should be fired if they don't have a D2C strategy. So, without further ado, let's bring him to the stage. It is Terence Kawaja, the founder of Luma. Yes!
All right. Buongiorno, Roma. Okay, last day. Fire your CMO. You know what? There's nothing like getting the attention of an audience by suggesting they should lose their job. It's great for TuneIn. It worked at the ANA. What I want to talk about is this, probably the largest, one of the most significant marketing trends. It's this direct-to-consumer phenomena. And then if we have time, a little bit of fun. Everybody up for fun? A little comedy at the end? Okay, great. I presume the first question you may be asking yourself is, at a marketing conference, why are you listening to an investment banker? We don't have the best reputations. You know, there's sound here. This is actual search results. So whatever you think of your day job, I wake up every morning knowing this is what people think of me. But I mean, we do operate at the intersection. Luma operates at the intersection of media, marketing, and technology. You've probably seen these Lumascapes that we publish with all the companies in the ecosystem, often referred to as like the headache slide, sort of become a bit of a media property on their own. But at the end of the day, our perspective is that as a deal maker. And why that matters is because, kind of like Watergate or any major investigation, if you want to get to the heart of something, the adage has always been follow the money, because the trends denote or lead to deals, and deals lead to trends, and vice versa. So hopefully we learn something from doing deals. And I got to say, this direct-to-consumer phenomena is really something else. It used to be that in marketing, if you were a brand manager and your brand lost 1% market share to the competitor, you'd have to, answer for that. We have seen in the last 10 years, relatively young companies across a variety of verticals garner double-digit market share against category incumbents who had been building their brand for decades. This is a phenomena of shift of market share that we have never seen before. And not only is it happening across multiple verticals, but virtually every category in retail it has been disrupted by these direct-to-consumer brands. So whether it's personal care, clothing, home furnishings, food, wealth management advice, every category has these new upstarts. In fact, of our Lumascape that we're building on this, already over 400 brands and counting. Not only is there a lot of companies that are being supported by, there's audio here, please, which we'll need later, $20 billion in venture capital fundraising. So not only is there a whole proliferation of these companies, they're well funded. And so you may say they're all not necessarily going to make it. That would be a true statement. The reality is, even applying any minority percentage, and you're still going to have a whole bunch of significant competitors. This phenomenon is global. In fact, these D2C brands are global, or perhaps better said, globally local. You see them not just in the US, but across Canada, the UK, Germany, all across Europe, including Italy, South America, and Asia. So this phenomenon is global. But perhaps the attribute that I enjoy the most about this category of startups is the meaningful female participation in D2C. Over 30% of the founders and CEOs in this category are women, which is what I would call a good start. And yeah, this is not some, passing fad or internet meme. We believe there's a real there to this phenomena. In fact, you know it yourself, right? Surveys show that, most people are saying that 40% of us are going to be making a D2C purchase. Put up your hands if you've bought a D2C product in the last year. Sure. Yeah, in fact, I'm wearing D2C, as we speak. This is a phenomenon you just know. You could sort of say that these brands, have more in common with each other than they do with their erstwhile vertical competitors. So yeah, Allbirds sell shoes just like Cole Haan, and Warby Parker sells sunglasses like Sunglass Hut. But the way they go to market, their design proclivities, the way they treat media means these companies are more in common with each other than the traditional guys. In fact, you could say that direct-to-consumer in 2019 feels like programmatic in 2009, a decade ago, where we had rapid new company formation, a fragmented ecosystem, lots of venture funding, and nascent consolidation. Today, direct-to-consumer has all of these exact same attributes. Now, we know how it played out on the enterprise side, right? The good news was, huge growth. We saw programmatic grow to total digital spend over 100 billion, programmatic 80% of that, and yet controlled largely by two companies. So we saw a duopoly form on the enterprise side. I would argue that because of they're all in different verticals, that there is no natural monopoly in direct-to-consumer. So this trend may breed a healthier ecosystem. Now, of course, there is Amazon that controls half of all e-commerce spending, which for some D2C brands is a useful distribution back end. And they do compete with their own private label brands as well. But it naturally feels less susceptible to a sort of dominance. And look, this playbook has been run before, right? This is not the first time. So if you think of like gaming companies, mobile gaming companies in the early aughts, companies like King and Machine Zone and Supercell, they basically, despite the fact that they had built games, that was the product they sold it direct to consumer, and ultimately these companies, what they were good at was marketing, was customer acquisition. We then saw it expand with the app world, again, about 10 years ago, where after the iPhone came out and people started selling lots of services over apps. And so direct-to-consumer, I would argue, is just the third incarnation in this sort of natural gestation of performance marketing. And if you think about it, the gaming folks had it easy, right? They had one vertical, gaming, largely one demo, young males. They had a digital-to-digital channel. That is to say that they bought media on digital channels, converted on the digital channel, deployed their asset in the digital channel, and then tracked usage on the digital channel. So they had effectively a closed loop, which made it easy for attribution and get better at customer acquisition. Well, the app world, we now had multiple verticals, right? We had a broader set of demos, but at the end of the day, it was still digital to digital, still a closed loop. Well, direct to consumer makes it more complex as well, larger, because we're talking more categories. It's all verticals, it's every demo. It's now omni-channel, right? At least in the US, you see Peloton, bus shelter ads, you see Casper 30-second spots. I'm sure it's the same here. And yeah, you got a closed loop, but only in direct-to-consumer, because you're omni-channel, you got to do a little bit of work to close the loop, right? You need some technology to help you with the attribution, make sure you know how to do it. And look, it's no wonder why this came about, right? There was the necessary aspects of the app ecosystem and all of the back-end stuff like AWS and Spotify. That was necessary for this phenomenon to happen. But perhaps bigger is our sort of consumer openness, right? Never before have we seen people want to try new brands. And let me tell you something. If you're a brand manager used to the notion of brand loyalty, and all of a sudden in a world where it's not as relevant, that is potentially very, very scary. We've sort of tried to figure out what the elements of the sort of DNA are, and we came up with these 7. So digital, native, mobile. Well, these 7. I'll go through some of them in terms of what differentiates these direct-to-consumer brands. One is obviously digital, native, mobile-centric. Warby Parker gets over half of their new customers on the mobile phone, and that's obviously a stark difference from traditional marketers. In design, I call it the amplification of everything. Everyone knows Johnny Ive is this amazing industrial designer. Today it feels like he's been cloned, and we now have lots of Johnny Ives designing virtually everything from makeup to suitcases. They're just better design. Of course, the D in D2C stands for direct. So we know these companies are bypassing agencies, wholesalers, retailers, going direct to consumer, and yet the more successful ones are actually forward integrating into retail. They're doing that not just to widen their audience, they're doing it for marketing purposes, and they get great customer feedback. In fact, they've grown beyond the digital channel. So while they started in digital, largely on Facebook and Instagram, they've now, as I mentioned, gone on to retail. They're doing a lot of podcast advertising out of home, and television. Television is the sort of newfound channel for direct-to-consumer brands. And it's because in some cases they can get the media cheap, if we're talking sort of non-core cable networks, but with the ability to target now with the connected TV capabilities, applying the kind of digital attributes of targeting and personalization to the big screen where you've got sight, sound, and motion premium inventory, and something that differentiates it from digital brand safety. So this is, I believe, a huge phenomena and a huge opportunity where we'll see these direct-to-consumer brands get a lot more mainstream. Well, we know the way they spend is very different, right? If traditional marketers have more of a spray and pray advertising approach using unknown IDs, the direct-to-consumer folks want to do much more precise, tailored marketing with known first-party data around who their users or potential users are. You could think of it as they just don't treat advertising as a discretionary expense. They think of it as more of a cost of goods sold. So they fully understand the connection between spend and results. It's called customer acquisition cost math. And it's very, very specific. So in their minds, spending money on advertising is not an expense. They move it up the income statement to a cost of goods sold because they know that every dollar is accountable and it's all performance. In fact, the whole migration is to move away from proxies and impressions towards business outcomes. And it is this sort of phenomenon, approach towards a sort of performance model that really creates the operating leverage in these companies. Think about it. Venture capitalists are funding shoe manufacturers and fitness equipment manufacturers. Well, that's never happened before. Why are venture capitalists, who traditionally only invest in high operating leverage businesses like software, investing in these categories? It's because of the performance drives a higher operating leverage, which has attracted all of that money. Again, follow the money, $20 billion into the category. That ought to tell you something. And of course, content marketing. These companies are great at content marketing, often by telling the story of how they founded the company, right? This particular product wasn't working, couldn't find a good solution, so we made our own. Now, of course, it would be easy to suggest this stark contrast between these brilliant direct-to-consumer brands and the dunderheaded traditional marketers. Of course, the truth always lies somewhere in the middle. As I had mentioned, the direct-to-consumer brands are moving. The more successful ones, the bigger they get, they're adopting some of the tactics of traditional marketers, and traditional marketers, as we'll talk about, are actually adopting some of the tactics of the direct-to-consumer brands. So we're likely going to see a sort of convergence, which we believe would be a good thing. Some of these companies are achieving phenomenal valuations in the billions. I think since we did this slide, there's 2 more unicorn direct-to-consumer companies. So that's impressive. Yet, there's a lot of them. And so if you were looking to make an acquisition or invest in one of these companies, you got to be careful because there will be a high failure rate. Just like every other ecosystem that has this kind of fragmentation, you're going to get a lot of failure. So I guess the question is, can any marketer sort of get in on the fun? Can any marketer sort of take advantage of these trends? Well, let's go to the videotape, right? Here are the DNA traits. Let's see. Are general marketers digital native mobile centric? No, audio here, please. Can they focus on product design? Sure, they could do that. Disintermediation? No. many cases, traditional marketers don't even know who their customers are if they don't have a direct connection to be able to sell. Can they do identity focused customer relationship? Again, you need to know to whom your customers are. Could they do performance-oriented media spend? Well, yes, but the whole ecosystem is built on largely on the CPM, or spend for impressions. So I think there's a lot of work that would have to be done for traditional marketers to adopt that wholesale. Could they do content marketing? Yes, and many of them do it very, very well. And then finally, which gets to the crux of the title, do you have the right team that thinks about growth-focused marketing talent? Often at the direct-to-consumer companies, they basically call them the chief growth officers, and they incent them from a compensation standpoint purely around growth. So it's a different sort of orientation. We do note that it feels like in the last couple of years that the traditional marketers have taken notice of this phenomena and are doing a variety of strategies to adopt this. In fact, I had talked about probably the biggest loser in this category. Company affected by this phenomenon is Procter & Gamble, right? They famously lost double-digit market share of Gillette to Dollar Shave Club and Harry's. And of course, those two companies have now been acquired. And yet, they didn't take it sitting down, right? Mark said, you know what, we're on it. They've decided to take control of their data. They're focusing on innovation to launch their own direct-to-consumer brands. They've got an incubator, a venture investment arm that's making investments in direct-to-consumer startups. And yes, they're making strategic acquisitions of brands in direct-to-consumer. So they're not taking this lying down. They're definitely leaning in, because the alternative is these companies are just going to keep coming and coming and coming, and what do you do to defend? We also mentioned acquisitions. Already in the last few years, over $10 billion in deals have been done of direct-to-consumer brands, averaging a 5 times revenue multiple. That's like 2 to 3 times the underlying valuations of these businesses on a traditional basis. And that reflects, again, the operating leverage and growth opportunity that traditional marketers see with these direct-to-consumer brands. It's why we're focused on the area, because of all this activity. So ultimately, my message to traditional marketers is take this seriously. No, they're not going to be the be-all and the end-all, but these direct-to-consumer brands who have garnered tremendous market share and tremendous sort of EQ. People are really into these brands, relatively young brands, and so for all marketers, it behooves you to see what they're doing right and adopt where you can, or in some cases acquire. But this is, I think, a fundamental marketing phenomenon that's not going to go away, that deserves your attention. All right. It's the last day of Festival of Media. Why don't we have some fun? So besides my day job of doing M&A deals, I like to practice a little comedy on the side. And often I find if you want to attack or talk about an issue, maybe a sticky issue in the industry, a little bit of sugar helps the medicine go down. So sometimes we may have a little bit of fun with it, and with some parody videos. So what do you do if you want to talk about something as dry as data privacy regulation? Oh my God. That's a challenge, right, to turn that into comedy. And besides, what song could you possibly pair with a 4-letter acronym like GDPR? Well,
adverb, there's a coming black swan. I said adverb, this you need to act on. I said adverb, it's a new set of rules for your users in the EU. Adverb, there are steps you can take. I said adverb, there is so much at stake. You just comply, and I'm sure you will find proper ways for data to be mine. It's time to mess with the GDPR. It's time to mess with the GDPR. GDPR. Life didn't end with the GDPR. Opt-out is super low. You can still make a buck. Consumers don't give a fuck. Life didn't end with the GDPR. Life didn't end with the GDPR. You can still sell your firm, 10+ billion in deals that will pay for some real nice wheels. GDPR.
All right. But then, how do you capture stickier issues like this whole challenge, trust issue between brands and their agencies, especially with this investigation and all these reviews in the marketplace. There was a scene in a movie. Yeah, this is it.
A Terrence Kawaja film, Sculpt, Friction, Procurement's Extreme Methods to Tame Agencies. Starring Samuel L. Jackson as the procurement officer, Brett as the agency exec, John Travolta as the FBI agent, and featuring Bob Leonese as himself. Behind the scenes at the recent A&A Masters of Marketing conference.
Ezekiel 25:17. The path of the marketer is beset on all sides by the iniquities of the vendors and the tyranny of agency margins. Blessed is he who, in the name of efficiency and ROI, shepherds the media buyer through the lumerscape of darkness, for he is truly his brother's keeper and the optimizer of paid media. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my media plan. And you will know my name is Procurement when I lay my review upon thee.
Get down, get down.
All right. I'll do apologies to the agency people in the room, but if you can't make fun of agencies, then you can't do anything. So one final one. It kind of feels like with all the privacy regulations and everything, the question is, are we going to keep going? Are we going to be able to keep doing deals? And so as I thought about this, something I produced last week, my main message on that topic was, hell, don't stop me now. And so my team got together as Queen and produced this. I'm sure you'll recognize many of your cohorts in the cameos.
Tonight I'm gonna make my client a real good deal, and it will thrive. And the street, I'll turn it inside out, yeah. And doing it all with comedy. So don't stop me now. Don't stop me. 'Cause I'm making a good deal, making a good deal. I'm a rainmaker, closing M&A like a banker, defying the laws of gravity. I'm a talking head, keynoting like Pop Scott Galloway. I'm gonna go, go, go. There's no stopping me. I'm mapping out the shape, yeah. 5,000 logos, that's why they call me Mr. Lumerscape. I'm putting big trades on the tape. I wanna make a unicorn that gets it for you. Don't stop me now. I'm making such a good deal. I'm raising the hall. Don't stop me now. If you wanna make a good deal, just give me a call. Don't stop me 'cause I'm making a good deal. Don't stop me yes, I'm making a good deal. I don't wanna stop at all. Yeah, we're a rocket ship on our way to Mars, on an engagement course. We are a winning team. We're out of control. We're a deal machine, ready to reload like an atom bomb, about to explode. I'm mapping out the shape, yeah. 5,000 logos, that's why they call me Mr.
apologies to Freddie Mercury. Just remember, don't stop now. Thank you.